I was a senior in college, I started a chimney sweep company during an energy crisis of all things. That's when people were starting to burn wood again because the whole
Carter, Jimmy Carter was it?
Yeah, and the OPEC,
Yes.
embargo, all that stuff was going on, and the price of oil doubled, and people couldn't afford to heat their homes. A lot of people were using heating oil, which is a petroleum product. So then people in North Dakota started heating their homes with wood.
Right.
That was taking off across the country. And when people start heating with wood, then you end up with chimney fires. And so I sort of saw an opportunity in that energy crisis to do that.
And it's the theme of your life.
Yeah, and it was a there's an AP article. I was fortunate to get into. I went undergraduate at North Dakota State, and then I learned during the spring of my senior year that there was actually a thing called an MBA program because I was undecided on what I wanted to do with my life. And an advisor, also a World War II veteran, he gave me a Forbes magazine that had a story about MBAs on the cover, and it listed 6 graduate schools that were in there that were at the top. So it was, Stanford, Wharton, Harvard, University of Chicago, Northwestern, and Virginia. I think one maybe even 7, Dartmouth was in there too. Anyway, so I was like, well, these are the only ones. I'll just apply to those. I mean, I knew nothing.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about the whole process. And I'm pretty sure I would have gone 0 for 7.
Right.
But at the last minute, there was an AP article that went out about my chimney sweeping.
Oh.
And it had a picture of me sitting on top of a chimney, black and white photo, high above the ground. It was about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The steam's coming out.
Wow.
There's ice everywhere.
You had to climb to the top.
Yes.
And go down.
No, you get to the top, and then you had a weight with a chimney brush that you would lower up and down.
Right.
So anyway, and then I had, and I was wearing top hat and tails. That was part of the uniform, of course.
Oh, was that you made that up as part of the shtick?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was that's the
great.
expectation. I mean, we had, Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins. Everybody was expecting to have you show up that way.
Jim.
And I had and the people would ask me if I would sing the Jim Jimmery song. And
Can you sing it?
Well, I said I could, but I said you have to pay to do that. And they said how much, and I said I charge double for the whole job. And
So they never got you to.
I never had to sing, which was my
That's
preference.
good. Yeah.
But they were. But in the article that I was being interviewed by this AP reporter, it asked me why'd you become a chimney sweep? And I, of course, said, well, I was looking for a job where I could move up fast and always stay in the black. And so there was, I think that must have caught some admissions directors because I took a photocopy of that in the early days of photocopying, photocopy of that, put it on top of my applications for business school. And then I went, I swept the board and got into all of them because apparently everybody needed to have a chimney sweep in their incoming MBA class.
And you ended up going to Stanford.
Yeah, and that decision was made strictly by the brochures because I hadn't had an opportunity to visit campuses. I was, in
Too
college
busy.
working and doing all that. But I was the rest of them, all of the rest, all had some winter scene that included snow, and Stanford had palm trees and some other things. And so
nice change from North Dakota.
Yeah. And I mistakenly thought it would be warm, but I went, how Mark Twain once famously said that the coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco.
Yes.
So
true.
I moved to the West and thinking, hey, California. And I got there and I rented an apartment that was uninsulated, didn't have heat.
Yes.
The bathroom was in a separate building in the house. And I ended up, having to buy a space heater and electric blanket, wear a stocking hat and to make it through the winter. So it's
like Australia. It's very cold.
Yeah.
And so you were successful, went to university, you had a good career at McKinsey, and then you did this amazing thing. You mortgaged some of your family farm to buy into this software company. So tell us about that, because that ended up making you a fortune, making you a billionaire.
Well, not a billionaire actually. But the company was sold for over $1 billion, but I was about a 10% owner of that. So but it was a great outcome for everybody involved.
Why did you? That was a gamble, to mortgage the farm to buy into this sort of fledgling software company.
Yes.
So, and it was the 80s, so that was sort of just the beginning of.
Yeah, it was the very beginning of the PC software industry. It was just getting going. I mean, that was. 3.5 years before Apple or Microsoft went
Wow.
public. I
Yeah.
mean, it was like they were little companies.
And was that your forte? That you're
No, it wasn't. But I was, as you said, I was working at McKinsey in Chicago, and I was walking down the hallway, and I went by one of the corner conference rooms, and Adil Zainalbai, who was a year ahead of me, when he went on to lead the DC office and be head of McKinsey India, brilliant guy, nicknamed Scratch. Scratch had he had an Apple II computer with VisiCalc. And I had just spent 2 days and a night, doing an all-nighter for one of the partners with a physical spreadsheet with like an
All
HP
right.
12C calculator and
we're drawing it all out.
filling it out in
Wow.
like spreadsheet. I mean, that was what
Like an Excel spreadsheet, only on paper.
but it was on paper.
Wow.
I mean, I didn't know that this thing was going to be,
Yes.
that a computer was going to do this, and neither did anybody else at that point in time. If I had, I would have invented it, but I should have. But I was experiencing the whole frustration
Yeah.
of every time the partner, before he would, at 5 p.m., he'd be, hey, you're doing a great job, but I got 5 more questions. What if this? I mean, what if the price went up? What if
Right.
the cost went up? What if demand went here? What if a new competitor entered? Each time he said, what if? In my head, I was going 2 hours,
Right.
because
Yeah.
then like, okay, and then there's enough of those. There's like, okay, I'm going to be staying overnight again.
Right.
And he's like, great, have it on my desk in the morning, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's the pace of that place was hardcore,
Yeah.
driven a lot of brilliant people anyway. But then Scratch he was, check this out. And he hits the thing, and I watched the spreadsheet recalculate in like a minute or two.
Yeah.
I'm like, just did in 2 minutes, which took me 2 hours.
Yes.
That's going to change everything. And so from literally that moment on, I was like, I've got to figure out a way to get into the PC software business.
Right.
And so that was, and people said, oh, you're a visionary. You saw it for everybody else. I'm like, no. I'm like, I got hit in the forehead with a 2x4. It's like, how could I not see that was going to change?
Yeah.
Because I knew how much we were charging clients for my time per
Yes.
hour. And I'm like, wow. And what did that thing cost? And Scratch, where'd you get that? Does the firm buy that? And he goes, no, I bought it in a store. I mean,
Wow.
Apple didn't have Apple stores, but they had Apple dealers, computer dealers. And he just bought it. And then he was building the models and was going to give it to the client. I'm like, wow, that's great. So then the little bit of farmland that I had been divided up between my older brother, my older sister, and myself. So I had 160 acres of farmland, which is not enough to farm on, because dry land wheat farming in North
Yes.
Dakota, even those days, you would have needed 1,000 acres. And so I took a loan out against that farmland, and then that became the seed capital for this fledgling startup,
Right.
Great Plains Software.
Great Plains Software. And then 18 years later, you sold it to Microsoft
Yes.
for $1.1 billion.
Yes.
And what did you do to it in those 18 years? Did you build it up?
Well, we started, there was less than 10 of us. It was sort of like 10 kids that weren't really
Right.
new. There wasn't anybody that had experience in that sense of either building a company or building software, because it was all new and there weren't a lot of role models to look at.
And you quit McKinsey to do
Yeah,
it?
I quit McKinsey like 2 months after I saw that VisiCalc. I was driving back to North Dakota. And part of it I realized, which is, wow, this is most of that era of the 1980s. Young people were leaving our state. Our population was declining. We were one of the only states that had a lower population in the 80s than we had in the 1930s.
Wow.
Because there weren't jobs there. I mean, agriculture was in decline. The oil industry hadn't begun yet. The energy industries in North Dakota. So people were like, this state is, going down. And I'd gone to undergrad there, and I knew all these talented people, and they were leaving to go to work for IBM and the bunch, which was the bunch was Burroughs, Unisys, NCR, Cray, and Honeywell.
Right.
Those companies all had operations in Minnesota, including IBM in Rochester. So all the talent was leaving North Dakota and going down to the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And I was like, wow, I know some of those people. I could get some of those people back.
Right.
And we could all be back in North Dakota. And there's more kids coming out of school. I can grab the good ones before they leave. And so I understood that it was going to be based on access to talent,
Yes.
as opposed to access to natural resources.
Right.
And then
why did you do it in North Dakota and not just go to Twin Cities?
Well, I loved North Dakota. And then the other thing at that time was my mom was ill. My mom got cancer. And so part of it was like, hey, I could do this for my home state.
Yes.
And I could be back by friends and family.
Yeah.
And and there was no, we didn't have to be close to a customer set.
No.
Because in those days, we didn't have the internet at all. But I mean, we were shipping our product out with UPS or FedEx.
Right.
I mean, so if you were a customer anywhere in the 50 states, I mean, we could get it to you in 2 days.
And were you in Fargo?
We were in Fargo.
Right.
And
do you know, just sidebar, when I was at university in Chicago, I was the Washington correspondent for WDAY in
fantastic.
Fargo, North Dakota.
Yes.
You know, that many years ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I never went to Fargo though. I wish I had, but I was their correspondent.
WDAY is still the primary station.
Is it?
The mainstay, owned by the Marseille family. They own the newspaper.
All the people were lovely.
Yeah, no, they're great.
Always wanted to go.
Yeah, it's well, you'll have to go now.
It's on the bucket list.
It's on all the lists for best place to start a business, best place for college kids, best place to raise a family. You know, happiest.
And you pioneered it, really.
What's that?
You pioneered that.
Well, we certainly, there's the next generation of entrepreneurs, but I think we created a culture around innovation and startups that sort of permeated the market. And then but you asked about the thing. We started with less than 10. We grew to, by the time we got acquired, we had 1,200 people working in Fargo, 400 rest of North America, and 400 rest of the world. We were in about 20 different countries.
Still quite small.
Yes, but 2,000 people.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
I mean that
from 10.
Yeah, and from that was for the space that we were in. We were one of the largest in that mid-market space, and so Microsoft saw us as a platform that allowed them to go globally around what's now Microsoft Business Solutions.
Oh.
So then when we got acquired, that was the second largest campus in the world. I mean, Redmond was number 1, Fargo was number 2.
Really?
They didn't have any place else that had.
Amazing.
So so then I stayed at Microsoft because we did an all stock deal, stock for stock. It was 1.1 share of Microsoft for 1 share of Great Plains. And so all 2002 team members became Microsoft team members, retroactive to their original start date. So we were buying in versus selling out. So essentially overnight, we were
stockholders.
We were all stockholders and at the same level as if we'd have joined Microsoft,
Right.
20 years ago. And that was after we said no twice. We were a public company. We'd gone public. And we were having a great run as a public company, could have stayed public. So that's why we said no twice.
Yeah.
And then we said, no, it's not going to work unless we have a deal structure that preserves not just the intellectual property, but the team that has built that. And then so I stayed there for 7 years as a corporate officer. And one interesting side note from that during the time, I had a fantastic team and that included people that went on to be corporate officers at Microsoft in important roles, like Jody Euchre. Tammy Reller was the chief marketing officer for the whole company. Dave O'Hara just retired this year as the CFO for all the commercial business, 85% of the revenue.
And they were all North Dakotans.
They were all part of Great Plains.
Right.
But then one person that we picked up after we joined Microsoft, who worked for me for those 7 years, was Satya Nadella. Who's, of course, the current CEO right now. He's the greatest of all time. I mean, when he took over the company, Microsoft was about 400 billion in market cap, and now it's 3.5 trillion.
Amazing.
So as a non-founder, he's created more market value than any CEO, I think, in history.
What role did your department play in renaming the Gulf of America?
Well, of course, the Department of Interior has got a huge breadth of responsibilities that cover, land, minerals, irrigation, water, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, our amazing national parks, which we haven't talked about, but 63 sort of crown jewel national parks, over 400 historic sites. So all that, but we also have the U.S. Geologic Survey, which provides a tremendous amount of scientific data mapping where our minerals are. But they also have got a committee inside that group that is about place names, the geographic naming. Where they do, if their name is going to be changed, it has to go through them. But President Trump did an executive order that empowered me as secretary to make that official, to do that. And how fun, and President Trump was asked Catherine and I if we wanted to go to the Super Bowl. And we're like, well, that would be a lot of fun, but he wasn't leaving from Washington, D.C. He was going to leave from Palm Beach because he was at Mar-a-Lago at the Southern White House.
Yeah.
He was there. Well, part of the reason he wanted to fly from there to New Orleans was then Air Force One would be flying over the Gulf of America. So we had all the documentation ready. And then it's not just a simple piece of paper. When the name actually changes, the U.S. Geological Survey then populates information to our systems, which then are picked up by people like Apple Maps, Google Maps, and those around the world. And so we had to coordinate with the whole, both private and public sector mapping world, and with the captain and crew of Air Force One to know when we're going to take off, when we're going to be over the Gulf.
Oh, so you did it at that moment.
So we did it at that moment. So then, of course, it's the first time I had been involved in renaming a major body of water. So I was moving back and forth up between, we hadn't taken off yet, but going up and talking to the captain. They go up the stairs. I say up because in the 747, you go up the stairs and into where the pilots are and make sure we're all coordinated. And then the pilot made an announcement. So we had the press in his office. There's an office in Air Force One. The press was in there. He had the declaration. Catherine was there. She wasn't expecting that day. We thought we were going to the Super Bowl, but now she's part of this press conference.
History.
The two of us are holding up the map.
Oh, really?
The map that's got the first map that had Gulf of America on it. And then he was just getting ready to sign. And then the plane started to tip a little bit, and the pilot came on and said, "Attention, everyone, if you please look out the right side of your window. You're now looking at the Gulf of America." And President Trump had the pen in his hand, and he looked at me and he said, "The pilot did quite well. He's got a great voice." I mean, he sounded very, very official, like he'd been renaming, bodies of water as part of his career, as opposed to please, remain seated. I mean, he was, so it was fun for the pilot to be able to do it.
Yeah.
President Trump signed away, held it up, and that was the moment that it became the Gulf of
Amazing
America.
history. And he has that map in his Oval Office behind his desk now.
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, AP refused to go along with it. But
yeah.
Why did you go from this incredibly successful, interesting business career into politics as running for governor of North Dakota?
Well, it wasn't that fast. I had kids back in North Dakota. And so then in 2007, I'm going to step back from traveling around the world. And because when I was leading business solutions at Microsoft, corporate officer, and we'd grown from 40,000 people at Microsoft to 90,000. We doubled net income from 9 billion to 18 billion. I had people working in 120 countries. I mean, I was just on the road. My home games were in Seattle and my away games were the rest of the world. And my family was in North Dakota. So I said I was going to retire. That turned out to be an epic fail because I had started within 6 months a couple other businesses.
Right.
And one of those was software related. The other one was revitalizing downtown Fargo. So we've been involved in saving close to over 40 different historic buildings in downtown Fargo as part of that revitalization. Correct. But then on the software side, then with a nephew, we started a venture fund called Arthur Ventures to invest in cloud mobile B2B software companies. And that company lives on and is thriving, now based in Minneapolis. And I've no longer part of that. But that led to investments in companies like Atlassian from Australia, SuccessFactors, Avalara. So I ended up being a board chair of multiple other public companies.
So did you have to go into politics to stop starting up all these businesses, or to control your energy?
Well, this was I was working on philanthropy locally, and I was helping out the rural school that I went to because they were behind in tech. And then I was like, hey, I'm going to, help just with the basics and, computers and connectivity and software and, the things that I never had an opportunity to have because there was not a computer in the high school that I went to. So I was like trying to give back. And then I started asking questions about what does the state of North Dakota spend on K-12 across all these, rural schools across the state and everything. And the answer was $1 billion a year. So I was kind of shocked. I just had never thought about it. And I came home and said to Catherine, I said, we're not going to solve any of these problems with philanthropy because this is a drop in the bucket compared to what the government is spending. And maybe we should think about giving our time. And as when she would tell the story, then she would be like, we have an amazing life. Why would I know?
Don't wreck it.
But there was a poll out that had where I was down 69-10, and it was 5 months to the primary. And so part of how she became first lady was I told her, you don't have to worry about being first lady because we don't have a chance.
Yes. And then you won in a landslide.
We did. Yeah.
And then just fast forward, you were successful as a governor. Everyone loved you. You had great high polls. And then you decide you want to become president. Why?
Well, it was part of the decision to make that announcement was, in fully understanding what we were a long shot unknown, but at the time there was a lot of discussion going on, about policies that weren't about the core things that I felt really drove the country forward. That was, energy, the economy, national security. And with North Dakota being such an energy state and in such an ag state and being a border state, I really had built up a set of experiences and learning around the issues that were really facing our country. And at that time, there wasn't a big discussion about that. And some of the, so I said, hey, let's jump in. And if you look at my initial announcement that I made, some of the things I said several years ago is the same stuff I'm talking about here at this conference. Yes. And so I feel like we were not really running against any other Republicans. It was more about trying to get the word out because we were under assault in North Dakota as an energy resource state under the Biden administration. By the time I left, we were engaged in over 30 different legal battles with the federal government.
Wow.
So I was feeling it. And I'd been chair of Western governors, and I knew that the other public land states that are large, Alaska had 68 executive orders by the Biden administration against it. We sanctioned Alaska, the Biden administration sanctioned Alaska more than Iran. We were killing that state and their economic future. Yeah. And in some ways the same, whether it was timber, mining,
which is really
oil and
killing
gas.
America.
Right. Yeah. But yes, because Nevada, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho. All of these states where I was friends with the governors were all going through the same thing. And I just said, we need a voice.
And what did Catherine, your wife, say about that?
I think she understood it was the same, sort of long odds.
Yeah.
She jumped in, and I think
But she was a great first lady.
She was an amazing first lady. Yeah. But part of the reason she jumped in was because through her own personal experience, and if she was here, she would tell her own story beautifully, but she struggled with the disease of addiction for over 2 decades.
It was alcohol, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And then at the end, it's a depressant. She was suicidal.
Did you know?
No, this was before we were together.
Yeah.
But then she came, got into recovery. Then she spent the first 15 years in recovery not talking about it to anybody, not even her friends or her family, because of the shame and stigma associated with it.
And when you met, did she tell you about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was, and she was, she was forthcoming as we got close in our relationship, but it wasn't something that she was still talking about publicly. And then when we became governor and first lady, then it was like, what's your platform going to be? The public is asking. And during her first interview, she said, well, the platform is I'm going to eliminate the shame and stigma of addiction. They said, well, why did you pick that? And then she told me 5 minutes before the interview, she said, I'm telling my story, and I'm going to start telling it. I'm going to be a face and voice of recovery.